Hey, hey there. Welcome to podcast number 11. And today's topic is atheism. Um, um, Please like this podcast and comment on the podcast. I love feedback. My email is greatjewatheist at gmail.com. I'm feeling not too great. No, I got this headache I keep on getting in my nose, a little stuff, so I might lie down after this. Let's try to make this quick. Again, trying to compact these things, little subtopics, and so in my recent, I had a long one, why Noah's Ark is bullshit, and my theory is to convert you Christians to atheism, make the world a better place. But we have to do it slowly. So the first thing we have to do is show you that the Bible cannot be taken literally. And I don't want to spend too much time on that. So I'm just going to attack two things. And the first thing is that Noah's Ark is bullshit. And I'm going to attack another thing today, and we'll leave it at that. I think that's enough. I could attack, the story of Noah's Ark is, not Noah's Ark, the Exodus from Egypt is not true, of course. And all the New Testament things, such as Jesus raising the dead, or physically impossible, a conversion of loaves into fishes, etc., are highly unlikely. So I'm just going to hit one more thing. So the subtopic today: can the Bible be taken literally? And we're going to attack the notion that biblical scholars say that the earth is from 6,000 to 10,000 years old, okay? So they say, different people say that. First, we'll start with the Jewish calendar. The Jewish calendar says, in fact, we just had the Jewish New Year, and it says that it is 5779. So 5,779 years. In fact, they says you only have 6,000 years for the Messiah to come. And if he doesn't come, so we only have about maybe 221 more years. So that Messiah better get his ass cracking, because and he might come this year. The end of days is soon, according to one Jewish activist. Maybe we'll do a podcast on the Messiah, because I found that a fascinating topic. That is, to me, that's one of the, and Christians call it the rapture, and I don't know. I don't know the Muslims' belief on it. And to me, with all the other delusions religion has, that's one of the more interesting ones. So maybe we'll talk about that at some point. Many Christian scholars also are in this ballpark. There's several of them, too many to mention. They're around anywhere from 6,000 to 5,000 to 6,000. There's some low at 3,000, some high about 6,000. So, I don't want to go through them. There's a list you can look up. There was a famous guy. His name was Bishop Usher. He actually calculated it to be 10,000. You might ask, well, how did he get that number? If you go through the Bible, you can actually go, like Methuselah was 969. So that covered a period of about 10,000 years. And you could actually do an X be yat Y type of thingy, Like Adam was about 1,000 years. He only lived 930. And you can do that, and you can keep on coming back. And according to that, Bishop Usher said it was about 10,000 years old. The earth was 10,000 years old because, it took God 7 days. And he created man at the end of 7 days, and then he rested, okay? So now, if you're taking the Bible literally, you must see some problems with this. I mean, I don't even have to mention that. The problems, okay? So, there's some problems with this. I mean, and, it's just sad. It's not, it's silly. And it's not, I don't know if it's sad or it's just silly. I mean, you can't be this dumb. You just can't. You're not that dumb. You're holding on to something that's just silly. I mean, it's just silly. It's a silly, and the only way to fight it, you get mad and you want to hit people. That's what I found. And even this guy, man, he's a really nice guy, but he gets. I seen him get into a state one, and it wasn't with me actually. He was with this other guy, and it was. He's ready to hit the guy. Not hit. I go with God, and I've seen this with this other guy. And this is Pentecostals. They get very upset. So I want to be very careful. I think. He never did it with me, and I've been really rough on him too sometimes. And it's just really bad. It's just I don't know how to approach it. I just don't know how to approach it. It's just. He's a good guy, but his delusion is just terrible. It's just, and how do you tell someone? He's not a doctor. He's not a lawyer. Okay. Now, so we go away from religion a bit, and how does science see it? How does science see it? So what does science say about how old the universe is? So according to science, how old is the Earth? And then more, how old is the universe, okay? And science has an idea, and again, you don't know if it's accurate, but the best minds have gotten to this, and they've, and they've have their methods, and they're very complicated. They're mathematics, there's a lot of physics, and I'm not smart enough, but I tend to think they're probably correct. They might be wrong, but science is self-correcting. It's not set in stone, and maybe one day they'll say, well, it's not 4.5, it's only 3.5. And they say the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, okay, which is a long time, right? And by the way, that's a big difference in 10,000. Tremendous orders of magnitude. You can't imagine the difference. Not in the same ballpark, right? Actually, what's interesting, and 1 billion years later, life first appeared. And you're saying, well, how do we know this? Okay, and again, I am not the person. I don't know, but I trust science more than I trust religion. They have techniques, and they're also self-correcting. These techniques, and these are knowledge that have been known probably for 150 to 100 years, even more. I don't know how long this has been known about the universe. Guys like Einstein and Niels Bohr, and they've known these things. This is not new information. They didn't discover this in 2010, or this is common knowledge. If I say I don't even have to footnote it. The universe is 13.9 billion years old, give or take 100 million years. So just the idea, not even. I mean, it's not like religion says, well, no, the Earth is only 1 billion years old. Now. So how am I approaching this? So how am I going to say, well, people that are religious and really believe, they really believe that it's 10,000 years old, and taking the Bible literally, how am I going to approach this? So I'm not going to prove to fundamentalists the Earth is, this is too difficult. But what I am going to do is I'm going to prove the Earth must be more than 10,000 years old. And once I do that, all these arguments, that'll show another thing, that the Bible cannot be taken literally, right? And once I show that, and basically there are methods to date objects on the Earth that were once living. Once they die, we can date them. And this method can date objects up to 50,000 years. So if you can find an object that was once living that was 25,000 years old, and we date it, and by the way, this method is extremely reliable, give or take plus 50 to 100 years, right? It might be wrong, and the correction is 50 to 100 years. We know that we know that the Earth is more than 10,000 years old. It's at least 50,000 years old. So, and it's probably a lot more. And there, by the way, the inorganic things are. There's ways to date them, showing us that the Earth is a lot older. Even Pat Robertson is caught on video saying, we have to get away from this, that the Earth is 10,000 years old. Pat Robertson, and we're talking the fundamentals, and he even said that they found a dinosaur that was 65 million years old. You drill down 2 miles, it takes the Earth millions of years to build up strata like that. Pat Robertson. I mean, Pat Robertson, the most fun. So how can you, I mean, just unimaginable, these fundamentalists, the disdain for the truth. I mean, this is horrific. I mean, this is just mind-boggling. So I just have to prove that there were living objects on the Earth that have died, that are older than 10,000 years old, and the biblical scholars are wrong, and the Bible contains a story that is basically untrue. Now you might say, well, you know, I'm an older, that a day was maybe 10 million years. No, it's a day is a day. I'm sorry. Then you're adding stuff to the Bible that wasn't there. God, it took him 6 days. It didn't take him 6 million years, so you're making that up. You're adding that. So we're going to assume a day is a day, okay? And the begats, and Bishop Usher was right, okay? He was a very smart guy, Bishop Usher, okay? Now, to understand, let's give a little background. Let's understand how this carbon-14 dating works. Now, carbon is a very important element. And why is it an important element? Because carbon is the substance which all organic molecules are made of. Organic meaning living things. Inorganic means non-living things, okay? So carbon is really important to life. And now carbon is an atom, and it contains particles, so 2 particles. It contains 6 protons and 6 neutrons, okay? A proton is a positively charged particle, and a neutron has no charge. So in total, it has 12 of these particles, right? So we say carbon-12. We call it carbon-12. Now, there's another molecule in our atmosphere, and it's called nitrogen, and there's a lot of it in our atmosphere. In fact, nitrogen is most of our atmosphere, and like 75% or 76 or 77, oxygen is only 21%. So nitrogen is the most prevalent thing in our atmosphere, okay? So nitrogen is an atom, and nitrogen has 7 positively charged molecules or protons, and 7 neutral or neutrons, for a total of 14. So nitrogen is said to be 14. So carbon's a 12, and nitrogen is a 14. Okay, they're both very stable. Okay, and carbon and nitrogen is also a kind of an organic molecule because it's in many organic organisms, right? Now, nitrogen is also and carbon too is a lot in the atmosphere too. And now nitrogen is very susceptible to being bombarded with these things called cosmic rays. These things from outer space come and hit them, okay? Hit the nitrogen. And the nitrogen breaks up. And what happens is that it changes. And the identity of an atom is based on the number of protons it has. Okay, so the atom nitrogen, remember, has 7 protons, right? Now, it gets hit with these cosmic rays, and what happens, one of the protons gets bumped off or changes to a neutron. So now the nitrogen becomes 6 protons, but and has 8, still has 14, but it has 6 protons and 8 neutrons. And then it's no longer a nitrogen atom, but a carbon atom. Because remember, carbon, by definition, is 6 protons. That by definition. So once it not loses, but it changed, the positive changes to a neutral, it becomes 6 and 8, which still is 14, but is no longer nitrogen, it becomes carbon. Now, it's not 12 though, it's a 14. And this becomes carbon 14. So now you have an atom which is the same number of protons, but a different number of total particles. You have a carbon 12 and a carbon 14. Now, carbon 14 is found much less in nature. So, in fact, the total carbon in animals and in the atmosphere, and remember, carbon is redistributed if you think about it. Now, you might say, how? Well, plants take in carbon from sunlight, right? And the animals eat the plants, and the herbivores eat the animals. The herbivores eat the plants, and the lions eat the herbivores, right? And we eat the herbivores, and we eat the plants. So there's a whole cycle of carbon going on. And the amount of carbon in the atmosphere is pretty much proportional to the amount of carbon in plants and animals. It's very interesting. There's been a few things in that have changed it recently, interestingly enough, the amount of greenhouse, and of course humans are responsible for this, the amount of greenhouse gases might affect it in the future, and the amount of nuclear weapons testers in the 40s and the 50s might have tested it. They have opposite effects, interesting enough. One of them, the carbon effects, increases the carbon, and the nuclear test increases the nitrogen. So they actually have different effects, but that's another story. So now you have these 2 different carbons, right? And one's caused by, one is just a carbon 12, which is much more plentiful, very stable one. And one's caused by these cosmic rays of carbon 14, much less of it. And by the way, of the total carbons amounts, carbon 14, and by the way, that's found in plants and animals too, it's about only 1% of the total amount of carbon. Now, one thing about carbon 14, and by the way, there's 3 types of carbons. There's carbon 14, 12, which is 6 carbon protons, 6 carbon neutrons, neutral particles, called a neutron, positive proton. There's one called carbon 13, 6 carbon protons, 7 neutrons, carbon 13, and again the third one is carbon 14, 6 carbon protons, 8 neutrons. Okay, now and by the way, all 3 of them are called isotopes. They're all carbons, but they have different amount of neutrons, so they're all different. And the carbon 14 is interesting because it's called radioactive. Now, that's not a song. It's a good song, actually, by I don't know, what's the name of that group, with Paul Rogers and Jimmy Page. I should have played that. I wish I had another. But that's not a song by them, okay? I'm radioactive, whatever that is. You don't remember that song in the 90s, I think. So carbon 14 is radioactive. And you say, well, what the hell is that? What the hell is that? I don't believe in science. Radioactive means that the material starts to decay, okay, at a certain rate, okay, and half of it is gone in a certain time. And this could be very useful. And remember, carbon is in living organisms, and because carbon-14 decays, has something called a half-life. That means half of it will be gone in a certain period. And Willard Libby, who was a chemist, in 1949 was awarded a Nobel Prize by showing how to discover the carbon and showing the amount of time the half-life of carbon decayed, and by showing this and being able to date living organisms. Once a living organism dies, you can date it. So time zero, the organism dies. Let's say a tree dies, and then from that point on, that death, he no longer produces any carbon. You can date the decaying, and then, so half of his carbon will be done in 50 years. Another half will be done in, let's say, 11, and so on and so forth. And you could actually date an organism for up to 50,000 years. Now, what's interesting about this, and by the way, you might say this was actually verified. They know that there are certain pyramids through historical research in tombs of Egyptian kings, and what they did was they took pieces of organic tissue from them, and they were within like 50 years. So they know that this was very useful. Using carbon-14 dating, they found things within, they found many organic, molecules and things that have been over 10,000 years. Again, all the way you can find any living thing up to 50,000 years, because once 50,000 years come, pretty much there's negligible, everything is pretty much gone. All the carbon-14 is pretty much gone. So I have now proven to you that, although it does not say in the Bible, that any called young earth creationist is wrong. And then if you're an old earth creationist, you're basically saying a day is a million years, and you're not taking the Bible literally. You say, a day wasn't a day. No, a day is a day. So that's the problem. A day is a million years. So now you're not taking the Bible literally. So you're wrong too. Okay, so that is my second podcast dedicated to why you cannot take the Bible literally. So that was a good one, coming in about 23 minutes. And so we've really presented the point: the Bible is not to be taken literally, okay? Now, once we do that, now we all have to do is we have to basically prove to you why not only the Bible is not to be taken literally, but science has basically proved the Bible to be untrue, and the fact that God does not exist and could not exist. So we'll be getting into that, and that's the main, and it's just like a therapy for you religious people. And another thing that's really important, I'm not here to be mean. And life is really hard, and you say, what's your purpose? And I think my purpose is to say, I once believed in these crazy things too, in a way. I thought there was a God, and and he was just, but there isn't. It's sad. Wouldn't you rather know the truth? And see these pastors fleece you, and you spending your time going to a church and believing these ridiculous, crazy things that's written in a book, and because you were brainwashed when you were young. I mean, you could take your time. You could learn science. You could learn yoga. You could learn Buddhism. You could study philosophy. You could go and walk in a park. You could do bird watching. You could do so many things. You could donate to the poor. Instead of saying stupid prayers that no one's going to listen to. And it's so sad. You could see your children. You could play with your, whatever it is. But instead, to go to a church and get fleeced by these pastors at a collector plate. So, actually, we're getting into 25 minutes, but that's good. I'm keeping the podcast short. Okay, so maybe evolutionary psychology lesson next. All right, thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time for podcast 12.